Hey guys, in this lesson I want to talk about attending trade shows. Now this is a question that I commonly get. A lot of people have heard of the Canton Fair, which is the largest trade show for factories to attend in the entire world. There's a whole bunch of smaller ones too, but oftentimes people ask, do I need to attend a trade show, or do I need to make a trip to China or wherever else my factory is? So I wanted to address that. Now, I'll start off by saying that I was sold on Amazon for 2 or 3 years before I ever made a trip to China. And I think since then I've been quite a few times. And I've seen that there are definitely benefits of visiting factories, visiting trade shows, but a lot of them probably wouldn't be what you kind of guess. So I'll say that I personally, like I said, didn't visit China or attend any trade shows for the first few years of selling. I know a lot of people that have been selling on Amazon for years and have never been to one. So it's definitely not a requirement to visit factories or to visit trade shows. That being said, there are some benefits. I think the biggest benefit for me is that it helped me understand a little bit more about kind of like Chinese culture, Chinese business. I had the opportunity to see multiple different factories' products. And I think just talk to a lot of other people sourcing products. And through that whole process, I got like a much better understanding of how kind of like the whole system works, okay? So for example, if I was wanting to sell a weighted blanket and I was trying to find a factory for it, obviously the method that we've been talking about is I could reach out to a handful of different factories. I could ask them for samples. I would get them, and then I would inspect kind of like the different weighted blankets. Alternatively, if, say, for example, I went to the Canton Fair, which is in Guangzhou in China, I could visit the booths of the different factories that make this style of product. And these factory booths are typically right next to each other. So essentially I can go like to one little booth, I can visit that, talk to the salespeople of that factory, I can inspect the product. Sometimes they have a little catalog, whatever else. Then I can essentially go to the one right next to it. I can talk to them. So like pretty quickly, you can get a lot of different touch points and speak to quite a few different people. So I'd say that's one benefit of doing it. Oftentimes you also get to see new product ideas. So sometimes what happens is people don't research these products on Jungle Scout or whatever else they're using, but instead they go to these trade shows, they start talking to factories, they get a little bit more of like the inside scoop of someone saying like, oh, hey, this is a new style of product that's coming out. And this is probably more common with electronics, but you kind of like get these new product ideas that you wouldn't otherwise really find out about because they're not yet kind of like on Amazon. So that's kind of a good thing about it. And then one of the other things that I'll say is that right away, the suppliers take you a little bit more seriously when you do this because you have to imagine, like, if you were a supplier, there's probably lots of people reaching out to you all the time. A lot of people just kicking the tires, as they say, not taking it very seriously. But if you spent the money to fly out to China, visit this trade show, go around, speak with all the different suppliers, like, automatically they take you a little bit more seriously. So those are some of the pros. The cons, of course, are you have to invest the time and the money to do so. And for a lot of people, it's just not worth, the amount of vacation they would have to take or the amount of money they would have to invest to get a plane ticket over there. That's usually the primary cost. So those are some of like the kind of like the downsides to it. If you do want to go, I would probably recommend the Canton Fair. Like I said, it's the biggest one in the entire world. It's in Guangzhou, which is just a short ride up from Hong Kong. The good thing about the Canton Fair is like every kind of factory you can ever imagine at this thing. Like there's a whole row of factories like just make duct tape. And there's a whole nother row of factories that just make Christmas lights. So it's pretty crazy to see. It's quite the experience. So that's what I'd probably recommend. There are a lot of other trade shows. There's a whole bunch of them in Hong Kong. And some of those are general trade shows similar to the Canton Fair, but a lot of those specialize in, for example, like electronics or fashion or whatever else. So that's a little bit more about it. If you do decide to visit the Canton Fair, what I'll say is this is like it's hard for me to even explain how big this thing is. I should have looked up some statistics on the internet, but it's just crazy. Like, even if you walk around for the entire time, you like can't even visit all the stalls of all the factories. That's how big this place is. So I think a lot of people go into the Canton Fair thinking like, okay, I'm going to go there to come up with product ideas. And I've actually found that this doesn't work very well. And the reason is it is just so big that you do have to kind of either have product ideas or at least kind of like categories that you want to sell in, or else it's just like way too overwhelming. And I mean, it'd be like going to, like if Amazon had something on display that showed like every product they had for sale. That's how just like crazy big this place is. So it's better to come with product ideas or at least categories or niches or areas that you want to sell in. Find out where those specific booths are, and then visit those specific booths or those specific areas. Okay, that's what I strongly recommend. Now, something else that I'll say is there's 3 different phases of the Canton Fair. Each of these phases specialize in different areas. I'd look up the schedule before you go, and then you can plan your trip accordingly. What a lot of people do is they will plan a trip that overlaps over 2 of the 3 phases. And so that means you could like go for 2 or 3 days. There's like 2 days in between where they're tearing down the old booths and putting up the new booths. And then you go for a few more days. So like kind of for like a week-long trip, you can visit 2 different phases. And so that's one of the tips I have for you guys. Some other tips would be, so you go there with the plan. And then when you visit these different booths, it's good to have an opportunity to speak to these people. I would definitely bring business cards, because business cards are culturally extremely common in the Chinese business culture. Something else that I kind of like to do is someone gave me this tip once and I like it, is take a selfie with the salesperson that you speak to. And then when you follow up on an email, you say like, blah, 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 thanks for chatting with me. I'm interested in getting back, or I'm looking forward to getting this quote back from you. And by the way, this is the picture we took together. I don't know, there's just like this like level of connection that kind of happens from that. And I think I found that I get responses to my emails much faster from it. So that's one thing that I recommend. Another thing I recommend is I like to bring a notepad. And when they give me their business card, I like to staple it to the notepad and like take the notes on that notepad. And then I can also, like after I take the selfie with the salesperson I'm talking to, I take a picture of the notes that I took and their business card. And that kind of keeps it all together for me, because if you can imagine, you're walking around this giant, huge place. It's very overwhelming to begin with. You speak to like 50 different people in one day, and it's so hard to remember like what different people said or who you spoke with about what and that type of thing. A few other tips. I'd recommend installing WeChat, which is the chat app that everyone uses in China. I would also recommend to bring a backpack, because as you can imagine, if you get a whole bunch of catalogs and stuff in one day, it can be difficult to carry all this stuff around. I would definitely book with a hotel that's nearby that has a shuttle bus. All of the hotels in Guangzhou that time of year will have shuttle buses running back and forth to the Canton Fair. And yeah, I think that's about it. With that being said, if you do choose to go to Canton Fair, there's obviously tons of additional content online about it. But I wanted to give you a brief overview, since I do get a lot of questions about whether or not visiting China or visiting a trade show is necessary. Like I said, not a requirement by any means, but it is a good learning opportunity. And if you do decide to go, make sure you take the lessons that I've learned the hard way into account, and then that will kind of help drive probably a little bit of your additional resource that you'll be doing anyway. So thank you very much.